Hi, okay, so Roji is tagging along with me today. So the funny thing is that I initially went into this wanting to make a completely different coat, and I hadn't made a ribbon star quilt coat in a while, which this is the one I was trying to remake. And I found I had like the measurements for the quilt block listed on a sticky note, and I was like, great, this is the exact, like, these are the measurements I'll need to recreate this coat. Turns out I made a quilt block that was like twice the size I needed it to be, which is pretty much this one. So before I really even started the project, I got it wrong. But anywho, that just means that I'm making a different quilt coat. So I will be making I guess a new design. I haven't done this one before in a coat version, but it'll have a black base, and I'm using Fabulism Supply Co. fabric for the blue color pop. We'll see how it goes. Anywho, I just jumped right into it. I'm Sid, I'm the gal behind Lucky Lady Quilt Co. And thanks for tagging along with me. Let's get into it. I realized I didn't properly introduce Roji. She is the newest member of the family. She is a Cavalier. She's a little over 4 months old, so she's still just a youngin'. But yeah, she's gonna be my new sewing buddy and sewing muse, and I plan to make all the quilt coats. So yeah, this is Roji. All right, so I ended up going through and cutting out all of the fabric that I needed to make all of the quilt blocks that I believe I'll need for the coat. I think I just need 7 because the quilt blocks are so large. So I went through and I already made all of the inside pieces of the quilt block, which you guys saw. And then now I just need to make the flying geese. So I just need to press open the seams and then I'll have the flying geese ready, and then I can finally attach the corner squares. I do need to cut more out, unfortunately, but whatever. So I'll cut more of these out, and then I'll have assembled all of my quilt blocks, and we can finally put the coat together. It's pretty crazy how many different ways there are to make flying geese, but this is my preferred method. You can make, let's see, I think it's like 4 flying geese in one go, and then I also love chain piecing, so you can pretty much crank through the flying geese pretty quickly. Roji! Hi, Miss Roji! Okay, so I'm almost done with the quilt blocks. So this is my one finished one. And then I made enough straps for 7 total quilt blocks, which should be enough for the coat. So basically you just have to go through and line the points up, and then I'll sew these together. I'll press it one more time, and then I can finally put the blocks together and then assemble the coat. So it's coming along. So with the amount of ironing that I end up doing when quilting, I am in desperate need of a new iron. If anyone has any recommendations, please let me know. I'm on the lookout. So I finished making the quilt blocks, and I ended up making 7 of them. And when I went to lay them out to form the coat pattern, I realized that I am short 3 quilt blocks, which seems to be something that happens to me a lot because I rush into it and I don't plan it out. But anywho, so I'm gonna go make 3 more quilt blocks, but I did start kind of like Frankenstein piecing the blocks together. So this is the back of the coat, and basically I used 1 quilt block in the center, and then I had an additional 2 quilt blocks that I used for these pieces. So I kind of like, I sewed them together forming 1 column, and then I cut part of like, or I outlined the shape of the coat out, and then using the opposite side of the quilt blocks from up here, I just attached it to the sides. And then I also added like black fabric. So I am gonna cut this out, and then the back will be ready. I'm gonna use the excess scraps that like this part for the collar because I don't want to waste any fabric, and I also don't want to make any more quilt blocks. So yes, I am gonna cut this out, and then I'll go make more quilt blocks, and then I will continue to assemble the coat. This has to be the most daunting part of the entire process, is when I have to cut into the finished blocks. Like once I've cut into it and it actually forms the pattern of the coat, it is so satisfying, and it kind of marks the end of part 1 where I was making the quilt, and then it goes into part 2 where I can assemble the coat. So even though I haven't finished the workshop, I'm still keeping the batting and all of the fabric that I'm not really using in here. So I have my massive roll of black batting that I'm gonna use for this coat. I've actually never worked with black batting before, but I was very curious, and so I went ahead and just bought that whole thing. I also have black jersey knit fabric that I'm gonna use for the lining or the inside of the coat. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these out, and then I can bind all 3 layers together and then assemble the coat. And then it will be done, which is so much easier said than done, because I still have to do the bias tape and all that stuff. But we're getting there. So after taking a closer look at the label for the batting, I realized that it is polyester, which is something that I had actually wanted to be steering away from. I kind of wanted to be using cotton batting from here on out, but the best part about the black batting is that it prevents bearding from happening, and I had to Google what bearding was, but it's basically when the batting fibers will like poke through the quilt top and you can see little fuzzies. So if I had white batting with black fabric, it's so obvious when you can see the white fuzzies poking through, that with the black batting that won't happen, which I think is so cool, and I accept the polyester in that case. Another fun quilting tool that I have really appreciated is this walking foot. I started using it just recently, and I don't know why it's taken me so long to set it up, but I highly recommend it. So I kind of just cranked everything out that I needed to after cutting out the batting and the fabric, and I sandwiched all of the layers together, and I serged around the edges. I didn't have, well, because the edges are going to be covered by the bias tape, I didn't change out my white serge, or like the thread for my serger. However, if I had black thread on the serger and I was doing light colored fabric, I 100% would have changed it out, but you're not going to be able to tell that there is white thread along the edges, so I just kept it as is. I also added my Lucky Lady Quilt Co. logo, and I'm currently in the process of adding stitching to all of the pieces. So like right here, I'm kind of outlining the design, or like the shapes in the quilt block. And so I have black thread that I'm doing for the black fabric, and then I have blue thread that I'll do for the blue fabric. And then from there, I can add the bias tape. But I need to make it, so that will take a while. But from there, I can finally assemble the coat. So yeah, I think now that I have all of the pieces, I just need to finish adding the detail, like the thread detailing, and then I'll be good to go. So I'm hoping I can finish this soon. I have no idea when, but soon. So this is like the cheapest of cheap sweatshirts, but the reason I got it is because I can have Roji in the little kangaroo pocket. So yes, this is my mode while I am working from home. All right, so I finally finished adding the stitching. So I went through and I added the black stitching, which is impossible to see here. And then I also added the blue stitching. I'm keeping it relatively minimal as opposed to like quilts that use long arms, because I do not have a long arm machine and I don't know if I ever will. But anywho, so now that I finished that, I can finally move on to the last lengthy task of creating the bias tape, and then I'm going to add that to the pockets, attach the pockets to the front of the coat, and then I can assemble all of the pieces. But until then, I went ahead and I switched out the walking foot for the regular foot that I use for the sewing machine. The walking foot is great when doing the stitching in the quilt blocks because it prevents the fabric from like puckering, or it just makes it so smooth. And I wish that you could see it. Here, I'll show you. All right. Okay, I need to clean up a little bit, but basically on the pocket, this is what my example is. It just walks over everything so nicely without bunching and just like weird stuff happening. So I love the walking foot. But yeah, now I'm back to the regular sewing foot for the adding the binding, and back to the black thread. And I'm gonna go back to my smaller stitch setting, and I think that's everything that I need to change on the machine. But anywho, I'm ranting. I am gonna go ahead and make the bias tape. Okay, so I went through and I made a bunch of bias tape or binding, and I think I have enough for the edges and the pockets, but I totally forgot that I need some for the inside of the jacket since I basically sandwiched the lining, batting, and quilt top together. So I might have to make more, but until then, I went ahead and I added it to the pockets, and then I am going to sew this on right now, and then finally I can get to attaching everything together. So yeah, I am gonna go through and make a few more of these just in case. So I recently saw that AccuQuilt has this tool that will basically cut your fabric into strips for you. And then there's another company, I can't remember which company, but they have a bias tape making machine. I would just be so excited if I was able to automate the entire bias tape process, because the amount of time that I spend cutting out the strips of fabric and then making the bias tape it's so long. If I didn't have to do that, I'd be on cloud 9. Okay, so I have many little tidbits. First off, I thought I ran out of black thread, and I searched through all of my drawers everywhere and I couldn't find it. And then I looked at the table and it was just like laying there. So that was great. And then I have also realized that trying to sew with a puppy is so challenging, because I'm either trying to sew while she's sleeping, or I just recently gave her a little bit more room to roam around the sewing station, but she'll just be like eating the carpet, or I don't even know what she's doing. So that has been a learning curve, but she won't be a puppy forever, and I can do it. So, but anywho, with that said, I sewed the pockets on, we're all set there. I'll sew the bodice together, and then I'm going to add the inside lining. So I'm just gonna crank this stuff out, and then I can finally show you what it looks like on, and then I'll put the binding on. Or I'll do all of that and then just show you, so I'll be back. I'm also not sure how I feel about adding bias tape to the inside of the coat as opposed to just flipping the lining so the seams are hidden. I am torn on which method I like more. But I happily did figure out how to attach the snap buttons in a way that is relatively quick and painless. I finished the coat. I went through, added the buttons, and it's ready to go. So this is what it looks like. I didn't add any logo or anything on the inside. I'm still figuring out how I want to do that in general with Lucky Lady Quilt Co., but it does have the little logo patch on the pocket, and this is what the back looks like. I think for the next version of this, I'm debating if I want to, instead of having the center star, do like 4 different quilt blocks that are off center, but one day I'll do that next time. But yeah, this is what it looks like on. Ta-da! And this is the like size 6-ish that I made. So I think
I could probably layer like my puffy coat underneath it and then it would still be comfortable. It might be a little tight with the sweater. So yeah, but anywho, it's done. Okay, wait, out of curiosity, I do want to see what it looks like with the puffy coat. I think I just like always run cold in general, so I personally like to layer coats. Might not be for everyone, but I love the option. Okay, ta-da, it fits, it feels good. Thank you so much for tagging along with me while I made this handy little ribbon star quilt coat. I have a few more quilted projects in the works and then also a few personal projects that will be for my own wardrobe, so that will come soon. But yeah, I'm kind of torn. This wasn't a commission, so I think I'm gonna save this coat for an in-person market just because I like to be able to have all of my in-person stuff done, and then once that's like set and ready to go, I will start putting everything on my website and Etsy. I also need to figure that out. I just need to get organized with the business side of things, but yeah, I think I'll make a few more of these black coats. I'm gonna do different color pops, but I have a few different Fabulism Supply Co. fabric options. So I have pretty much like 4 different shades of blue that I'm gonna do. And then I also have maybe like a handful of different shades of like terracotta, like rose colored fabric that I'll probably pair with the black. So that will come soon. And I think I might make myself one because I don't have a coat for myself. So I think I'm gonna make one. But yeah, anywho, thank you so much. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. I'll keep posting them. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.